Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info. The biennial Manchester International Festival officially launched its full 2017 programme on the 9th of March at an event in a warehouse beside Piccadilly Station. The event, introduced by new MIF Artistic Director John McGrath, featured personal appearances from festival participants including actress Jane Horrocks, playwright Simon Stevens, Underworld's Karl Hyde, Frantic Assembly's Scott Graham, artists Yael, Bartana and Phil Collins, and New Order's Bernard Sumner. McGrath began the announcement by talking about a piece created by the people of Manchester with artist Jeremy Deller.
Walking a vast runway through Piccadilly Gardens. It'll be on at 6:30 p.m. on Thursday the 29th of June, and it's free. This will be one of 3 significant works in Manchester's public spaces this year. On the middle Sunday of the festival, the great Egyptian artist Susan will be working with Wayne McGregor Company to create an event in Whitworth Park, bursting out of the Whitworth Gallery, where a beautiful exhibition of Susan's artworks can be seen throughout the festival. Susan works with patterns and movements, creating delicate drawings and sculptures that respond to the life of her native Cairo. For the Sunday event, she'll work with a cast of professional dancers and recent arrivals to Manchester, migrants from all over the world, to create a series of journeys through the park for audiences, in the context of a joyful day of food and unexpected encounters. And our third Public Space Commission for 2017 will close the festival on Sunday the 16th of July. The artist Phil Collins is here to tell us about his piece, Ceremony.
Sadly, my name's Phil Collins, but I've been doing it for 46 years. 47 this year. I'd like to say a massive thank you to John and to the MIF team, basically, for all of the work which they put into making the project, which I am putting together for the closing night of the MIF Festival, which will be a public space work here in the centre of Manchester. And it's dedicated to honour the spirit of human dignity and solidarity that a hero of mine, Friedrich Engels, brought to the city. So he's a lifelong friend of Karl Marx, mill owner by day, communist by night, lover of the Burn Sisters, Irish Republican, Mancunian, factory workers, convivial, dashing, party animal, and a supporter of radical causes and the emancipation of the working classes. He comes here from Wuppertal in 1842, writes a book in 1844 called The Condition of the Working Class in England, about the conditions of the workers in the city at that time, basically. He runs his dad's factory in Weast, and I have been all around the former Eastern Bloc to Russia, to Belarus, to Ukraine, to look for a statue of Engels to bring to the city centre of Manchester for permanent installation in the city and to inaugurate in a live performance film event in the city at Tony Wilson Place, the former Gaythorne Gasworks, at Whitworth Street, basically, on July 16th. I've been working and meeting with groups, organisations, individuals and workers in the city to learn about their experiences at this moment, at this present political crisis, how work has changed and how the fabric and demands of work have changed. The event will be scored and soundtracked by the great Mika Levy, Local Boys, Dendyke Stair and Griff Rhys, formerly of the Super Furry Animals and the great psychedelic wizard of Wales, is going to write a new workers' anthem for the performance.
So, as Phil said, we've got some fantastic musicians as part of Ceremony, and in fact it'll be hard to get away from great music during this year's festival. Music for a Busy City involves short commissions from 6 major contemporary composers: Mohammed Fairouz, Matthew Herbert, Anna Meredith, Olga Newirth, Juan Groh and Philip Venables. Each artist has written a 10-minute piece for a particular public space in the city, ranging from Victoria Station to Canal Street. And each piece will be recorded, installed and then play hourly in those spaces throughout the festival, turning the city of Manchester into a musical instrument. And even online, you can't escape the festival this year, whether you like it or not. For our first ever fully digital commission, artist and game designer Nina Freeman from Portland, Oregon will be creating a new game, LostMemories.net, available to play online throughout the festival. So with artists from the United States, from Egypt, Austria, China and the Middle East already introduced, you'll be getting a sense of how seriously we're taking our middle name international this year. And in complicated times for Europe, I'm also delighted to be producing world premieres this year from two of European performing arts' greatest figures. The extraordinary choreographer, Boris Sharmatz, will be presenting his newest creation, 10,000 Gestures, in Mayfield Depot, in which a company of 25 dancers perform for 90 minutes without ever repeating one movement or gesture. Now, Boris's choreography is always thrilling and surprising, but this will be one of his most ambitious works to date. And in another European coup this year, we'll be premiering a brand new work by the great German director Thomas Ostermeyer, in a co-production with his Berlin theatre, the Schaubühne, and with Manchester's Home. Returning to Reims, starring Nina Hoss, is an urgent response to the new populist politics sweeping Europe, and promises to have all of Thomas's signature excitement and precision. Returning to Reims will be part of a special programme of work featuring the kinds of collaborations that will be seen in our new space, Factory, when it opens in 2020. And since Factory will be presenting great existing productions alongside its premieres, we'll also be staging an extraordinary revival as a Factory trailblazer this year. Available Light is a legendary collaboration between choreographer Lucinda Childs, composer John Adams, and architect Frank Gehry, three of America's greatest artists of the last 50 years. This revival, in Adams' 70th birthday year, will bring this hugely ambitious performance to a whole new audience. And while we're excited by the possibilities of Factory, the festival will also be keeping to its much-loved tradition of immersive theatre in unexpected places. Party skills for the end of the world. Some of you have already experienced Nigel and Louise from the famed Shunt Collective on the way in. So Nigel and Louise will be taking us on an extraordinary journey to an apocalyptic party in a piece called Party Skills for the End of the World. And you'll be learning everything from how to mix the perfect martini to how to sew a flesh wound. Skills we all need. So, if you fancy immersing yourself even more in the apocalypse, alongside that show, the wonderful chef, Mary-Ellen McTague, will be creating a very special dinner party for the end of the world for a small group of diners each night. So another site-specific piece in this case has been created for us by the remarkable company Theatrites, which makes truly beautiful work for children and families. And Sue from Theatrites is going to come up and tell us about the welcoming party.
I need to tell you a little bit about why I and Theatrites and the Manchester International Festival, the Royal Triennale and Manchester Z Arts want to make a welcoming party. You probably can imagine choosing a title like that. It's in light of the current refugee crisis. Theatrites likes to take on quite complex issues and make them accessible to everyone. And by everyone, we include children. So unlike the party maybe where you can feel like children and think about serious things, this is a welcoming party where children can practice being political. We want to create an immersive piece, a cross-art form, magical piece that takes our audience of about 100 adults and children around the really wonderful old building. It's an 1830s warehouse at the Museum of Science and Industry. We're going to be animating the spaces, animating objects and puppets, because what we like to do, the way we can engage a number of different ages, is we create visual metaphors to explore the subject. And each of the spaces, we hope to ignite a revelation from each of the amazing performers. We have 7 performers, all of which have been touched by the refugee experience in some way.
Thank you, Sue. A really resonant piece of work. One of the exciting things about commissioning work for the festival is watching artists take the temperature of the world. Everything's changed in the last 12 months, and our artists are responding in real time. This is where MIF's commitment to commissioning new ideas from artists comes into its own. Many of the pieces we're talking about today are being made right now, and they'll continue to evolve in response to the events happening around us. And while we never give artists a theme to work with, sometimes, of course, shared concerns start to emerge. The Welcoming Party looks at journeys people take to find a new home. And there are two other pieces this year that have come to look at journeys and home in equally resonant ways. One, Home 1947, by the double Oscar-winning director Sharmina Bayek-Chinoy, takes as its starting point the experiences of children, now older people in their 70s, who left their home during the partition of India and Pakistan. And another international artist who's taken journeys as his theme is Hong Kong's Samson Young. Samson's a rising star in the art world, and he's currently busy installing his next work at the Venice Biennale. So he sent us a film too. Here's Samson.
The work that I'm making is titled One of Two Stories, or Both, and it's a radio piece / drama. The piece really started with the discovery of a myth about how some early Chinese migrants arrived in Europe on foot, how they walked all the way across the continent. And I was really fascinated by that story, not really necessarily about whether there's any truth to that myth, not really interested in substantiating the myth or disproving it, but rather looking at how people tell stories and why people tell stories and how storytelling is very much a part of identity formation. This piece is going to be played as a live radio piece over 6 consecutive nights. Each night we are going to have a short episode. There will be a special FM frequency that is dedicated to this project for the duration of the broadcast. And then at the end of the broadcast, there will be a separate but related element, an installation element that is going to happen at the Chinese Art Center.
Another question that's emerged quite strongly this year, perhaps for understandable reasons in the world, is the role that gender plays in everything we do. And Yael Bartana's piece, What If Women Ruled Our World, addresses some of those big issues head on. So now we actually announced your piece, What If Women Ruled the World, back in November, just after Donald Trump's victory, and it got a lot of attention all over the world. Can you tell us a bit about what your inspiration was and what the idea is for the piece?
So my idea is to push beyond our imagination, so pushes all the boundaries of our imagination and challenge the status quo of patriarchy.
And it's inspired by Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah, Dr. Strangelove, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the film. In Dr. Strangelove we see only men in a war room, while one female character is away, never have any access to make decisions. Actually, it's based on the last scene of Dr. Strangelove, where he imagined 10 women from one male. So now I invert the power structure and domination, and this time 10 women will control this one man. So basically, imagine a war room filled with 11 women, and they're all going to take decisions on the most urgent questions.
So we're going to be building the war room in Mayfield Depot, and you're going to have a combination of professional actresses and experts from around the world in the war room.
Right, that's the most beautiful part of the project. We're going to have experts, women of actions that are actually making decision and changing reality, coming together with 6 actresses, and together they will make decisions and try to provide the doomsday.
Great. And I know you're working with...
try to avoid the doomsday.
But as I said, artists change their projects all the time, so...
That's what's Freudian, yeah?
So each evening we've got just about 2 hours to save the world, basically.
Yeah, between 2.5 minutes, we're 2.5 minutes before the doomsday.
Before the doomsday.
So 2.5 minutes to 3 hours.
And you're working with some great collaborators on this.
Right. Exciting part of the project, we have an amazing team. Vicky Featherstones from the Royal Court and Abby Morgan has joined the team. So we are actually great minds working together to make this happen.
And people will know Abby Morgan, of course, wrote The Iron Lady, amongst other things. So a really interesting addition to the Doctor Strangelove mix. From a very different perspective, director Scott Graham, composer Karl Hyde, and Simon Stevens, the wonderful writer from roundabout here, have been talking to the men of the UK.
So I'm Scott Graham. Fatherland is partly inspired by a notion of inarticulacy in men, or the suggestion of inarticulacy in the relationships between men, but also just to get a grasp of people's experience of fatherhood, the weight of that responsibility, the expectations, what we pass on, what was passed on to us, and how we deal with that, the weight of it, really. And to begin with, myself and my two collaborators, Karl and Simon here, we devised a questionnaire and we interviewed each other. And we realised very, very quickly, as witty and entertaining as we are, with endlessly fascinating lives, it wasn't enough. It doesn't give us that image of fatherhood. And we realised that what we have to do is go out and collect voices, go out and interview people. And maybe the only way that we would see that image of fatherhood was to think of it as a collage, and that we are single pixels in that image. So that's what we set out to do.
Yeah, we went on we hired a car and went on a road trip throughout England, like 3 men in a boat, but 3 men in a shit car instead. We went back to our hometowns. Karl's from Kidderminster, Scott from Corby, and I'm from Stockport. And to interview people about their relationships with their fathers. We went with the expectation and the intention that when people talked about their fathers, we might reimagine masculinity, not as a kind of brutal force of patriarchy, but as something more complicated than that. What we hadn't anticipated, I don't think, was that in the spring of last year, we'd find the whole of England on the cusp of a massive reimagining of what it was itself. And I think the play that we've made, the collage that we've made, is a collage that captures a political reimagining of the entirety of England as much as it captures a reimagining of patriarchy or masculinity.
What we also discovered was that these places that we'd run away from, that we'd abandoned, these places that we hated, the places that we just couldn't wait to ditch and go off to college and to other places of great creativity, were the places that had made us. And in visiting these towns that were kind of bombed out and had been abandoned, and had felt that they were conveying that sense of abandonment, of that distance from the nation in the southeast, that these places that were so irritating to us, we realised had actually become the things that had formed us. And we took this dialogue that we were having with people from our hometowns that had made magical places. We all went back to our towns and went, I don't know why you thought this was a bad place, it seems pretty cool to me. We went back and we took this dialogue and we started to reimagine it, some of it as verbatim theatre, some of it as reimagined dialogue, and some of it as folk songs. And for the last 30 years I realised that from this project, what I've been doing is taking words from the street and just re-singing them as people's actual stories. The legend that folk music carries within it, we're just setting it to a different beat. And we're taking these stories, these legends, these carriers of people's lives that go on far beyond their own lives, and bringing it into a piece of work beyond anything that any of us have done before. The collaborative gestures that my friends have made in opening up their work to me, and I hope that's from me to them, has enabled us to go beyond anything that we came into this project imagining, and it continues.
I've got a day job as well as half of the band Underworld.
So I got away with that one.
And Underworld have got their own projects as part of the festival as well. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yes. Fantastic project that really excited that Manchester International Festival has fully embraced, has allowed me to bring an installation performed piece which will run for a duration of a week after Fatherland opens, and I've got my other hat. And with my partner Rick, what we've brought here is it started off as an installation that we created in Tokyo about a year ago, where I took the words that I gather off the street and I painted them all over the walls in a kind of semi-protest. Walls covered in cardboard. Cardboard is a material that I use as my canvas all the time. Cardboard, the conversation I started having in my head was, it links to a lot of things that I see in the street, people living in the street. Cardboard is a material for carrying a message, as warmth, as shelter, as privacy. And from there, a new project evolved called Manchester Street Poem, in which I brought to organisations who work directly with people with lived experience of sleeping rough, living on the street, whose lives have gone into massive decline, and these organisations are helping them rebuild their lives. What I wanted to do was to bring this project and offer it to be hijacked by these organisations and people with lived experience, in order through this project and me to tell their stories, to be heard. I see people who are reduced to the homeless, have no names, have no identities, and yet I'm fascinated by their stories. So it will be a shop window, it will be a performed installation of me writing furiously for a week their stories on the walls of this building, and at the same time it will be a digital library which Manchester Festival has agreed, this was a major part of it, has agreed to continue. It's a legacy piece. I didn't want to leave here and go, that's nice, thank you very much, goodbye. I wanted to actually leave something that was for the people that are working here tirelessly every day to try and help people with problems living on the street. So my gratitude to the festival that they've supported that and have put it together in this extraordinary online library which will go on and have a life beyond me rabbiting on.
So Manchester Street Poem, created by Underworld with people of Manchester, will be showing throughout the final week of the festival in a shop front in City Centre Manchester, with artwork by Karl and music by Rick. Another exciting music theatre collaboration comes from actress Jane Horrocks, who we're delighted to have with us today, writer Nick Vivian, and Cabaret Voltaire's wonderful Steve Mallender, now of course of Wrangler. Cotton Panic will be a theatre gig at Castlefield Market, exploring a moment in Lancashire's history when the region's cotton workers sacrificed their own security and incomes to support the anti-slavery struggles in the United States.
John obviously told us the background to this, but it was an opportunity to work with Jane, and we did come at this at a rush. It was the last thing that the festival kind of went with, and we're really pleased that they've agreed to do this. But for me, it's a fascinating story, and we're telling it through a gig, as a gig really, and it's a challenge to sort of represent some of these things that this story means through film, and through music in town, and using electronic equipment, using machinery that I'm familiar with to represent some of the things that went on in Lancashire. But overall, it's a story of that empathy, special relationships as they are now known across the Atlantic, and what happened then. For me, coming from Sheffield, it's a story of industry and post-industry as well, and also it resonates today about what happens when, through structural changes and economic changes kind of occur, and how people are victims of that, but also how they reach out across each other. So it's an opportunity to tell that through text, and through traditional sort of stories and diaries and things, and Jane's the one who kind of came with this. It's her thing, so I'll let her carry on.
Well, I have nothing else to add apart from just that the Manchester International Festival seems to be the perfect home for this piece, because it is very much an international piece, and I think a very untapped piece of northern history, which not a lot of people seem to know about, which I'm amazed there's never been a drama made about it or anything. I didn't particularly want to do it as a drama. I wanted to do it as a music piece, having just done a music piece at the Young Vic, which I really enjoyed, and I just think particularly with the music that we're their industrial soundscape and the archive material that we're going to use, I think it will be a very interesting and challenging way to put across this very important story.
Panic will be on through the last week of the festival at Upper Campfield Market. And talking of local heroes, this year is the centenary, of course, of the birth of a truly great Mancunian, Anthony Burgess. And 2 pieces in the festival celebrate and respond to his legacy. No End to Enderby by Graham Etoff and Stephen Sutcliffe takes the core character from one of Burgess's great novels on a time-travelling journey, resulting in a wonderfully eccentric film installation at the Whitworth Art Gallery. Meanwhile, in The World Was Once All Miracle, composer Raymond Dew has created a major new symphonic song cycle in response to a series of Burgess's poems.
It's a privilege to be commissioned to do this piece to celebrate the centenary of Anthony Burgess. My relationship with Anthony Burgess is slightly unusual because for years I keep thinking he was a composer because I picked up his book called This Man and Music about 20 years ago in a second-hand bookshop in London. And in my mind, when I was in my early 20s, I keep thinking Anthony Burgess is a composer. Not only until about 10 years later when I discovered Clockwork Orange and I realized that he was better known as a writer. So I had taken an obsession with Burgess as a composer. And in this particular book, he spent a whole chapter talking about his symphony in C. And we are very, very lucky to have BBC Philharmonic to play the European premiere of Burgess Symphony in C alongside my new piece. So my piece was based on 6 fragments of Anthony Burgess' poems. And he's much better known as a novelist, but he wrote quite a substantial body of poetry. And I read a lot of them and decided to set them into music based on the fact that Burgess was fascinated by languages, music, and the conflict of good and evil. So all my songs are going around this kind of 3 topics that fascinate Burgess most. I'm very lucky to have Roger Williams, the fantastic baritone, to be giving the world premiere of this piece with the BBC Philharmonic, with Michael Francis conducting on the 4th of July, Independence Day.
Another collaboration with the BBC Philharmonic involves the brilliant Icelandic composer Jóhann Jóhannsson, who many of you will know for his Oscar-nominated film scores such as Sicario and The Theory of Everything, and soon the eagerly anticipated Blade Runner 2049. In his new work for the festival, Last and First Men, he creates an epic film and music piece narrated by Tilda Swinton, which will fill the Bridgewater Hall in a spectacular fashion. But not all our great musical moments should be for grown-ups. Fresh from directing Philip Glass's Agnaton at the English National Opera, Improbable Theatre's Phelim McDermott will be creating an opera for audiences aged 6 to 18 months, with Scottish Opera's composer-in-residence Liam Patterson, and I'm reliably informed, if any of you want to know, that it will be okay for the audience to crawl on the set. One of the most popular spots for people of all ages during MIF is Festival Square, our takeover of Albert Square with music, food, dancing and debate. The BBC will be in residence throughout the festival, making a wide range of programmes right there on the square, and the Pavilion Theatre will host the best of global and local music. And this year, we've made the Festival Square itself one of our artist commissions, with Paloma Gormley of Practice Architecture and Nick Henninger from Office of Crafted Architecture, 2 of the UK's most exciting young designers, creating a range of new structures for us alongside the much-loved pavilion itself. And another very different programme of music has been curated by the brilliant Marianne Hobbs. Her programme for the festival is called Dark Matter.
Manchester, as you know, one of the most important homes for music in the whole world, but we wanted to do something really progressive and radical, which is why we created this incredible set of 8 gigs, Dark Matter. We're going to take over 2 venues in the city, venues that you probably all know quite well, Gorilla and the Ritz. But we're going to totally transform them. So when you walk in, they'll be completely blacked out. And we're working with one of the most radical lighting designers on earth, as far as I'm concerned, a guy called Stuart Bales, who lit my BBC prom. And he will transform these spaces into new universes using light. There are 8 gigs, as I say, and my challenge to you is destroy your boundaries. Come and see every single one of them, because we have every conceivable form of music. There are young, independent, Manchester-based artists on every single one of the bills. And the bill features everything from the radical free jazz of Colin Stetson to the intense drum metal of Sun, who are coming in especially from Seattle. You'll hear street poetry from the likes of Koji Radical, who brings his first show ever to Manchester, all the way to things like the really pioneering work of Clark, who is one of War Records' most important artists, who's bringing a brand new show with dancers. But the entire bill is up on the website. I implore you to check it. And as I say, destroy your boundaries, come to all of the shows, and give us an opportunity for you really to experience music in a completely new way.
And alongside Marianne's programme, other musical acts include the magnificent Arcade Fire, with up-and-coming stars Sampha, musical Globetrotter Bonobo, and the resurgent Ride with songs from their new album, their first in 21 years. There'll also be a special, very intimate comedy programme with the unique Machuntleth Comedy Festival. They'll be in residence in Manchester. Jonathan Schofield will be creating 3 special walks for us, inspired by those big outdoor shows I mentioned at the beginning. And our strand of debate and discussion, Interdependence, will this year span over all 3 Saturdays of the festival. The theme this year, in the midst of all that's going on, is We Need to Talk, and unexpected pairings of great artists, thinkers and experts will address the big themes of the day. But we started today with the people of Manchester, and I want to end with some of the city's greatest citizens. New Order have had a worldwide impact on music and are among the most significant artists ever to emerge from the city. For the 2017 festival, 2 major projects engage with both their legacy and their future. Dave Haslam is here to talk to Bernard Sumner and Tom Chapman about 2 highlights of the festival.
I'm Dave Haslam. Bernard, this is Tom. Obviously, the legendary New Order, pioneering the use of electronic sound in the 1980s, and for Manchester International Festival, New Order will be performing live with a 12-piece synthesizer orchestra. This is something that's never been done before. It's a bit of a challenge.
No, Manchester International Festival wanted us to do something completely different from our normal set. We've just been touring the world for about 12 or 14 months, and a specific set and a specific set of visuals. Manchester International Festival wanted us to do something different, so I came up with the idea of that we play songs that mostly we don't normally play in the set, like old gems, if you like, and that we would take those songs and break them down into the various micro components, like smashing a mirror, if you like. And then we're going to use musicians from the Royal Northern College of Music, most of them are students there, and these various constituents are going to be arranged by a string arranger that we've worked with before called Joe Dudell, and there's going to be 12 synthesizer players and the band in front of the synthesizer players. We're going to deconstruct the songs, Joe's going to reconstruct the songs, and the students are going to play them, hopefully better than we play them.
And you're doing 5 shows at Granada Studios. One of the extra elements is the visual element, which has always been important, obviously, for New Order.
Yeah.
For this, you're using Liam Gillick, the acclaimed artist. He's collaborating.
We are. I came up with an initial line drawing, and then Liam Gillick, who is a really good artist, does installations. He's a friend of Peter Savile's, our sleeve designer. Pete was very keen for us to work with Liam. Peter's involvement with it was he gave us a brief which was modern original. So they have to be original pieces done in a modern way. And Liam has come up with some absolutely fantastic designs. He's took that original line drawing and ran with it and has designed us a really, really intriguing set, which I can't give too much away.
Correct.
Until you see it on the night. Yeah.
Okay. So there's 5.
Can I just add as well that
Yes.
there's a poignancy for us to play at Granada Studios, because our very first chance ever to play on television was on Tony Wilson's show. Actually, I think it was actually Bernard Reports, and we played a Joy Division song. That was in Joy Division. We played a Joy Division song, Shadow Play, and another one, I think. And that was our sort of introduction to television. So Granada's got a very close place to our hearts, yeah, because
and the relationship with Tony.
And the relationship with Tony, who later became the boss of our record label, Factory Records.
And to reflect that, the shows are called So It Goes.
The show is subtitled So It Goes.
So that's 5 shows, 12-piece synthesizer orchestra, Liam Gillett, Granada Studios tour, the other Granada Studios. The other element that New Order are bringing to the festival this year is at the Manchester Art Gallery, and that's called True Faith. And that's an art exhibition which explores the visual legacy of Joy Division and New Order. It's got Peter Saville posters, it's got some of the great videos, the Jonathan Demme video, etc. But it also has a whole host of works by modern artists, fans of the New Order, and people inspired by New Order. Julian Schnabel, Bart Leckie, Jeremy Deller. So that's at the Art Gallery as well. So the 2 shows combined celebrate and demonstrate the iconic status of New Order.
Brennan mentioned the subtitle for their show is So It Goes, and that's because the actual title, I don't know if you saw it up there, a very strange equation that Peter Saville came up with as one of Peter Saville's challenges to come up with a title of a show that nobody can even say. So, a classic from Mr. Saville. So that's our programme for the 2017 Manchester International Festival. We hope that you'll all join us in venues, hidden places, public spaces, and online for the fullest possible range of work through our 18 extraordinary days.
You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.